So good evening, listeners. I decided to break my YouTube video making silence to comment on a few things that have been going on recently. Most notably, what I see as a building crisis among content creators in the ideas community here on YouTube. Now, of course, for anyone who has been watching YouTube in the year 2018, you've realized that the ideas community has been overtaken with what many people have called internet blood sports. This is a form of YouTube dialogue that was really pioneered by the Worskies, and later taken up by people like Jean-Francois, JF, and others like Tonkasaw, who I think is working in coordination with JF and the Worskies, although the affiliation is less than clear. At any rate, this particular format of dialogue basically consists of putting high-profile people in a bottle, or an internet bottle, together and then shaking it violently, stirring up a lot of contentious drama, a lot of debate, and a lot of verbiage. These things usually go on for 3 hours. And at the end, people get some sense that resolution has been arrived at. And of course, these things were almost immediately controversial. I wouldn't say that they were entirely new to YouTube, but they marked a certain departure from how conversations and live streams were managed in the past. And pretty predictably, they generated a certain amount of controversy. A lot of people came down on the pro or anti-blood sports side. There's a lot of videos on the subject, with people like Sargon of Akkad or Mr. Metacorp basically weighing in on whether they think these things are productive or not. And I myself have weighed in on this subject here and there. I initially thought that the emergence of internet blood sports was a fairly positive development. After all, I started my channel with the hopes that more dialogue would be able to come forth on YouTube, more conversations between parties who regularly didn't talk to each other. And despite some conflicts with characters like JF, I continued to think they had some productive role to play. But at the same time as internet blood sports were reaching the apex of their popularity, I noticed another very strange thing seizing the YouTube ideas community. And that is a particular type of silence, a lack of new and interesting videos and new and interesting ideas coming onto the medium. Of course, people had their regularly scheduled podcasts and their regular scheduled pre-formatted video series that they kept on making, but there didn't seem to be any big splashes the way there seemed to be regularly from 2015 to 2017. Part of this could just be due to a coincidence, a lot of creators getting tired of making the same kind of videos, a lot of creators just getting tired generally and going on vacation for once. But I've kind of been casting about for an explanation for this phenomenon because it doesn't seem to be particular. It seems to be that we've hit some sort of YouTube calm, a place in our dialogue where no one really knows what to do going forward. And it absolutely has everything to do with internet blood sports. I think in the past when conversations were had or conducted, people felt like there was some kind of agreement going forward, or the conversations were more or less individual. I remember way back several years ago, some MRAs and Sargon getting into a debate over whether feminism was autistic or not, or something like that. And there was some ultimate resolution and reconciliation. But for some reason this time, with the emergence of internet blood sports, no one really seems to want to move forward or really know how to move forward. And this really has less to do with the particular conversations that occurred on internet blood sports. It has nothing to do with the fact that Sargon debated the alt-right or Richard Spencer was platformed. Richard Spencer, or people who had Richard Spencer's ideas, had been platformed before in much larger venues. Sargon had debated them, whatever. I don't really see that as the relevant feature in this entire interaction. Rather, what I think internet blood sports really put squarely in front of YouTubers who dealt with ideas like Sargon and anyone else involved was, what is the YouTube ideas community at its core? What is its purpose? What is its mission going forward? Is it entertainment? Is it educational? Is it news? Is it opinion editorial? Now, one of my most popular videos, I've done a variety of videos on Sargon and the culture war generally, but one of the most popular ones was when I pointed out that Sargon's big dilemma at this stage of his YouTube career is really deciding his relationship to one person in our cultural memory, Jon Stewart. And what I mean by that is that our cultural discourse, at least as it pertains to the kind of information you're consuming on YouTube, the visually seeing people discussing new ideas and presenting them in an entertaining way, it really hinges on one key distinction, and that is the distinction between entertainment and serious opinion news and editorializing. Jon Stewart was the first person who really realized that this distinction could be blurred both for political and financial benefit. And this is very much the model that carried people like TJ the Amazing Atheist and Sargon to prominence on YouTube. I think in the case of Sargon, more than anyone else, he understands that the times we're experiencing call for more than that. That in some sense, he or someone else like him has to be a person who transcends Jon Stewart, who is able to create something that definitively is serious, even though it comes out on what people might consider to be an entertainment medium like YouTube. All right, but what does this have to do with the internet blood sports phenomenon? Well, I think what really occurred in the internet blood sports phenomenon wasn't so much controversy or rudeness or the kind of chaos that pervades all of these things, the showmanship or the large super chats. What really occurred in the internet blood sport phenomenon was a realization, I think, that the most prominent people on YouTube doing this sort of opinion, ideas, editorializing were doing it for purely entertainment purposes, which I still think JF and Andy Worski and Mr. Medicare are doing it for purely entertainment purposes. I don't know if this is really controversial, but the people most associated with this format either have said that they're purely entertainers or have shown that they only can serve that function inside the place they occupy in the media. I don't need to go over Andy Worski's real inability to come to terms with the ideas he's discussing on his own channel. I mean, the guy is now going in for some serious right-wing fare. But it never appears like he's really internalized any of it. I mean, he seems like he's totally swallowed the alt-right, but he's not joining the movement. He's not conforming his behavior to some kind of reactionary mode. He's not embracing any of the moral prescriptions or political activism that would come if he truly embraced those ideas on any sort of serious level. He just keeps on going with his show, cashing in the $200 super chats, and making sure that the stream of drama keeps on going on. He doesn't get more serious thinkers on, he gets sillier thinkers on. Now, with Andy Worski, I'm not so sure that this is really intentional or if it's just a function of his personality, but certainly in the case of JF, you get the sense that there really isn't any desire other than to keep the drama train chugging along. I already made a video critique of him, so I'm not going to belabor my objections to him right now. But, when you get to people like Mr. Metacore, you get people who openly think that this whole platform, YouTube, the ideas community that we have here should be purely entertainment. And it's that emergence that's really sort of petrified a lot of other channels on the internet. I mean, what made people like Sargon really fun to watch for a while was the idea that they weren't just entertainers, that they might take on the mantle of proto-media force. It's almost sort of anticlimactic if he can be eclipsed by something that really transparently is being done only for drama. Moreover, if internet blood sports finally do take on and become the dominant media form on YouTube, it will be all too easy for the mainstream forces to dismiss the medium as a hive for trolls and as something that does not need to be taken seriously. Regardless of what you might think about 100,000 subscribers on this medium, it isn't a hill of beans when it comes to influencing things generally. And after all this drama, nothing much is to be made of it if the average person can dismiss this as just mudslinging online. And from what I can ascertain, that is exactly the angle that the mainstream wants to take towards all ideas people on YouTube. And that's not good for anybody who cares about the development of things generally. At least if they want commentary, that's a little bit more biting than CNN. But still, I think the reason why it is cutting against Sargon, and the reason why I think he's having a hard time taking the high road that really is his to take, is the fact that at many levels, Sargon benefited and grew due to the same attraction to drama and entertainment that is driving the current wave of internet blood sports. Now, one of my favorite YouTubers, Dr. Randomacam, pointed out something that I think anyone who does YouTube videos should repeat to themselves daily, and I've taken to repeat to myself as much as I can, and that is that idiots like you. Stupid people are interested in the content you produce. regardless of the intellectual quality, regardless of the perspective you think you're taking to things. There are a number of people who will never be able to get the message you're trying to put over, and are there just because the thing is popular and they want the spectacle, or they just like the drama generated by conflict that they can actually visually look at online. Is that fatal to an ideas channel that wants to be taken more serious? Well, no, of course not. I mean, you can always generate the content that you want to produce. But for someone as large as Sargon, I think what he has to come to terms with is that much of his audience was originally subscribed to him for the drama, for the feminist takedown videos, for any number of things that weren't really the principles that he's currently trying to promote in his mature phase. I think the unanswered question for everybody on YouTube and in the internet generally is, what do you want an audience to take away from your videos? Do you want them to feel validated in their own belief? Do you want them to experience drama? Do you want them to come away with something that's more edifying? And what does it even mean to come away with something more edifying from a YouTube video? Something that, to a large extent, no one really invests in. We just click on them and watch them, usually in the spare moments of time or in the busy points of our day where we have some particularly mindless task to accomplish. Again, I'm sure if I asked this to V. Monroe or Sargon, they probably would fall back to the fact that they are entertainers, and this is just YouTube, and these are just our opinions. But that just gets you back to the land of internet blood sports, of Jerry Springer-like content really cynically unloaded so that people can thrive off the drama it generates. I think that answer is a deflection. I think everybody wants their audience to, in some sense, be enhanced by the videos. But we're not really honest with ourselves. We don't really explicitly ask ourselves what we want someone to take away from watching the videos that we produce. And that, if anything, I think is what's causing the current YouTube paralysis that a lot of channels are undergoing, and the conversation is undergoing generally. There doesn't seem to be anything important to talk about because it seems like we've exhausted everything. And we've also exhausted our ability to take the ideas we talk about seriously, or even believe that the ideas we talk about have impact the people listening to them. One conversation and the staged drama surrounding it might just be the platform of a totally different stage drama around a discussion point that doesn't seem to even be internalized the next day. And it's had me thinking a lot. And these thoughts have somewhat coincidentally coincided with the YouTube retirement of one of my favorite channels, Reactionary Expat. Now, Reactionary Expat is what I would broadly consider to be an alt-right channel. And as most people who watch my channel know, I am a critic of the alt-right. Still, I was a thorough admirer of Reactionary Expat's work, mainly because it never seemed that he lost sight of the fact that he was speaking to actual people, and not just entertaining for a mindless crowd. In fact, one of the reasons why I think he has left his channel, or perhaps has reformed it since it seems like he might be forming up a different project, is that he realized, much as I have, that to a large extent his community, for most of the audience, is simply a time waste, is simply something that is not reflected upon. Nevertheless, in his career, although I might quibble with some of his political perspectives, Reactionary Expat seemed focused on actually communicating with people who wanted to learn something. And most of the videos I really liked from him were just things about how it is living as an Australian in Asia, or a description of his favorite books and movies, or even how to hide reactionary and countercultural institutions in plain sight. Again, it's not to say that I found every one of Reactionary Expat's videos helpful. To some degree, I disagreed with a great many of them. But they were very insightful, especially towards the beginning and the end. I remember in his later videos, Reactionary Expat gave a very honest rendition of his own alienation from his society. And I remember thinking that I have had insights along very similar lines. One line that sort of leaps out at me in particular was when he talked about a conversation he had with his friend over the trade-offs they would make for diversity, in which his friend implicitly admitted that he would sacrifice his society and the well-being of his descendants if only to facilitate the increase of diversity. To which Expat sort of extemporaneously comments that what he truly wanted were for his family and posterity to thrive, for his ideological compatriots to thrive, and for his native society in general to thrive. Ultimately, that's what we should be working for. And I think that's the question that Expat asked himself. How are these communications helping us to thrive? How are they helping us to grow as individuals? What does a good interaction look like? What does my audience carry away from the videos that I make? It's a tough question, and one that a lot of YouTubers don't really seem to ask themselves enough. And it's one that I've had to answer haphazardly, but I think to keep on going and making videos, some answer is better than no answer. I want my audience to feel like they're not alone. I want my audience to learn something. I want my audience to be able to make better sense of what they're seeing in their own lives and what they're seeing on the internet. I want my audience to learn how to use dialectic and rhetoric better. I want them to better understand what spiritual experiences are, and to understand how transformative they can be both to the individual and society itself. But more than anything else, I want my audience to come away from any one of my videos feeling love and a renewed interest in whatever I'm making the video on. I want them to feel that the world has been expanded, that they can engage with the outside world in a new and interesting way. Everyone knows that I'm a pessimistic reactionary. Everyone knows that I think the world's just going down in flames. But I never have really felt that that opinion has changed my fundamental love for this existence and the things within it. I think a reaction in some sense is necessary. I think a rethinking of many of the principles that have governed modernity is coming, but I don't want this to be born out of a rejection of everything that is good in this world. People should be fighting for the things that they love. And YouTube videos have to communicate that love, not just the pessimism, not just the expression of superiority and the feeling that we might be in the know in the ways that our opponents are not. And that's going to have to be the goal going forward for this channel. I am a great believer in conversation. Conversation will always have a home, but I want conversations that go somewhere. And I don't think this internet bloodsport phenomenon is going to be long for this world. If anything, I'm hoping that YouTube can be a step for more people to find community, for more people to be able to find a way to view the modern world that makes sense, and to find others they can communicate and collaborate with to take better and more productive steps in their lives. One thing more than anything else I hate thinking of is I hate thinking that I have fans. I've come to really dislike that word, especially as it applies to YouTube, because it's that very attitude that I think creates this notion that drama and entertainment should dominate over meaningful transmissions of ideas and edification. I'd like to think that the people who watch my channel are either people who are broadly sympathetic to my worldview and are watching out of interest, are critics, are just looking for something that is a new point of view, or perhaps are friends, allies, or supporters. At any rate, I'd like to think that this is a mechanism where people can be actively engaged, or taken out of themselves, or put in a mode that's not simply one of passive entertainment. And perhaps it's folly for me to think that that's possible. I know the internet doesn't work like any community that humans have ever really interacted with. It's very difficult to form moral communities because no moral can ever really be enforced, either through peer pressure or through some kind of incentive system. But it's just that hope that keeps you making videos. Because without it, we're just doing Jerry Springer. We're just dancing monkeys. And I think there's really a limit to how much you can do that. And serious people like myself and Reactionary Expat are trying to come to terms with that. And maybe a next step can be taken. But with that, I'll finish out this very impromptu talk, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening.